book haul, baby. Hello everybody, thank you for joining me today. I do truly appreciate it. The month of September is almost over. And last night, Hurricane Helene, or whatever her name was, went on past. Heavy winds here at the casa. Heavy winds, no electricity. If you listen closely, you can probably hear the generator. That old generator out there ticking away, pumping in lights, pumping in fans, pumping in stuff like that, keeping the freezers froze at the house so we can carry on in somewhat normal fashion. Let's run out of fuel. Then it'll be something. Anyway, the month is almost over, and I picked up a lot of books this month. I don't got space for books. Why do I keep picking up books? This is the madness. This is the mania. Oh yeah, the madness and the mania. It doesn't make any sense, but it happens. I went through all sorts of different channels to get books. I've shown you quite a few books this month on the video scope, but I've got some that I haven't shown you. So what I'd like to do, take a few minutes and show you what I got and where I got it from. And the first place I want to talk about is a place in Castleberry, Florida. Castleberry, Florida. This place is called Bright Light Books, and it's a pretty big bookstore, pretty cool bookstore. And I picked up some things from there. The one I'm going to show you first is the one that excited me most. It's the first edition, first print copy of The Running Man. And yeah, it's a soft cover, but that's the way it came. And I've been wanting this for a while. The problem is that anymore, people charge way too much for them. I mean, people pay way too much for them. It's become a popular edition. And usually the ones that are in a condition good enough for me, people are wanting too much for it. Or other people are wanting to pay too much for it. But I did pick up this one at the Bright Light Bookstore at a price I could definitely tolerate, and I'm glad to get it in. The Running Man by Richard Bachman, if you know who that is. But anyway, the first time I ever heard of this book was by watching a Arnold Schwarzenegger film called The Running Man, and somewhere in there I figured out it was based on something from Stephen King. So in the year 2001, in October, don't remember the exact date, in October of 2001, living in Kansas City, Missouri, I read this book, and the ending, my jaw was hanging. I could not believe what Stephen King had predicted, an event, something like an event. Told a story eerily similar to an event that occurred just the month prior. But I loved the book. I absolutely loved the book and still do. And so I wanted to get this one. I've got multiple copies of the book that have Arnold Schwarzenegger's picture on the front. But this is the first edition, first print. The number line goes all the way down to 1. And for a cheapo paperback book, it's worth a lot more money than you would think. But I'm glad to have it in the collection, prized. I walked out of that store feeling a little bit taller, a little bit broader, a little bit happier. Adding this to the assortment, to the soiree, to the menagerie. Also out of there, they had a bunch of Stephen King books. A bunch of them. But another one that I was introduced to through a movie. And I don't remember the year of this movie. I was a kid. I was young enough to be afraid, be terrified of Cujo. Oy. But I watched this movie as a kid, scared to death as you would expect. And it's always held a bit of a special place in my heart for me as well. So I picked up this Stephen King book. It is first edition, first print. Cost me $14.99. I wrapped the dust jacket in Broad Art, and I stuck the sticker on here just so I'd remember what I paid for it. But first edition, first print, Bright Lights. I got their little business card in here. Set that aside. Anyway, we got our dust jacket price intact, and the price is $13.95. This one has the address, 625 Madison Avenue, New York, 10022, copyright 1981, and yada, 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 print in the United States. But There it is, first edition, first print. The condition was good, not great, but good enough for me, for what it is. So I got that one at a price that I was happy to be able to get that one at. And one more thing I walked away from that store with. This was a book, just the book I wanted to read. I wonder why. Suntup Editions, shortly thereafter, came out with a book called American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Anyway, I wanted to read this book, so I picked up a reader copy from there, a big, fat, thick, soft cover copy that I'm going to read. So that's what I got in Castleberry at The Bright Light Books. Now, I went to another bookstore also last month. I actually went there twice, this month in September. I went there twice, and I picked up, both times I picked up some stuff here. And this one is called the Paperback Book Exchange in Port Richey, Florida. Pretty cool, a smaller store, but still a lot of stuff. And one of the things I like about this store is the lady that owns it or runs it, or the lady that's always there. She has a section called Books to Movies. And there's a lot of movie novelizations, but there's also a lot of books that were made into movies. A lot of movie tie-ins, and I like that kind of stuff. So it was pretty neat. And she has, I don't think I've ever walked in there and not walked out with at least a few books. But here's another book that I needed to read. And I've got a couple of fancy editions of this book with some amazing artwork from Francois Vaillancourt from Suntup Editions. But I wanted to have a copy to read. And so she had this one. And on the surface, it's like, wow, that's a good one to have. But the condition is pretty poor. And it's an 8th print. Trade edition, soft cover, but I needed to read it. So I got me a reader copy from there. Cool looking paperback if it was in better shape. But anyway, that was a good pickup there. Now I talked about her books to movies section, and I didn't like this movie. Usually I collect movie novelizations of movies that I dig. And I did not like Cowboys and Aliens, even though I'm a big fan of Harrison Ford. However, I listen to podcasts, driving and stuff like that. And there's a particular podcast whose name has escapes me at the moment, where they talk about movie novelizations and they rate them and stuff like that. And that seemed like those 3 people that were on this podcast all said that this was the best movie novelization that they'd ever read. They said this one was so good, so much better than the movie. So when I saw it for sale, for cheap, I figured, hey, maybe that's something I ought to read. So I bought it. Now I got to read it. What else? All right. Now there is a man called Conan. Ever hear of it? So I picked up this copy of Conan the Warrior by Robert E. Howard, edited by L. Sprague de Camp. And I love these. I love the looks of these paperback books. I love the Conan, and the price was right, so I took it. She had quite a few more of them in there, but this was the one that I wanted out of the batch that she had. What else? This one I read a while back. I read a book, the book called The Director Should Have Shot You by Alan Dean Foster. A friend of the channel sent it to me as a gift. What do you know? It was nice of him. I read the book, Mr. Geis. I read the book, and I loved it. I did a review on here. You can check it out. But in there, he talked about writing this novelization called Luana. And memory may be a little fuzzy, but this was one that he wrote practically blind. Not blind, he could still see. But he had no script. He had no nothing about this book. I think he wrote it based on a picture on a movie that was coming out. So he wrote this novelization knowing practically nothing about the book, knowing nothing about the movie. And I never heard of the movie. So I bought this movie novelization because Alan Dean Foster story about it in his book. But Luana, novelization by Alan Dean Foster, as savage as the beasts that raised her. And interesting. I may read this. I've got a lot of stuff that I expect to be really good to read over the rest of my life. I don't really expect this to be really good, but it might be, and I may get to it. I'm not going to make any commitments on this one. It was mostly his story, which interested me in this book. Now, a couple more things I picked up over there. I'm sure you've all read this book, and you're all going to say it's phenomenal, or you're going to say something about punctuation. I've not read the book. I watched the movie, and the movie to me was crushing, and now as a father of 2 boys, I don't know if I got it in me. However, The Road by Cormac McCarthy, this movie tie-in version was there. It was cheap, and I took it. And if I have the guts, the courage, whatever it is, or the intestinal fortitude, I may one day read it. I bought it to read, but I'm having second thoughts already. Go figure. And the last one I picked up over there at the Paperback Book Exchange, which sells hardcover books also. This one is not a hardcover, and it is a trade softcover edition of a book that I just recently read, actually. But I didn't have the set. All of the Levidian publications, trade softcover versions of the Matthew Corbett series that were available. I got all of the arcs, and I got the Mr. Slaughter, which came with a signature page and was signed. And I didn't get any of the others from that series. Now, the last trip I made to this bookstore a couple months ago, I picked up some of them that I hadn't read, some of them to buy and read. And then I started thinking, I'm going to go see Robert McCammon this December in Birmingham, Alabama, the Alabama Booksmith. I might as well get more books to get signed. I had already read this one, so I skipped it at the time. And this time I was back, and I bought it. It was half of the cover price, of the Amazon price, and a good deal. So I'll get the ones that I have signed and put them on the shelf, and that will all be cool with me. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about Amazon purchases. Yeah, love it or not, sometimes I buy books from Amazon. But this one also was a Robert McCammon, Matthew Corbett book. And this is, so far, the newest novel in the Matthew Corbett series, King of Shadows, The King of Shadows. And it's the only one I haven't read that's been released yet. In December, the last book, Leviathan, will be released. But this one, the penultimate novel, I haven't read it yet. And I've got a limited edition from Levidian Publications. And I've got the trade edition hardcover from Levidian Publications. And I bought this book because it's got its own artwork on there. The artwork, and I think that's the Vincent Chong, is it? Let's look and see. The Vincent Chong artwork, dust jacket. Vincent Chong, that's right. So they came out with their own separate cover artwork for this one from the trade and from the limited edition. Plus, I got to read it. Plus, might as well get it signed while I'm there. So that helped me make that purchase on Amazon. Came in the mailbox with some other stuff from Amazon. Worked out all right. But a couple more purchases from Amazon. Actually, this one here, I may already have shown you. It is one of my very favorite authors, Walking God's Green Earth, F. Paul Wilson's latest duology, The Upwelling. This one is book 1 of The Hidden. Already had that one. Haven't read it yet, but now book 2 is out. And it is Lexi, book 2 of The Hidden by F. Paul Wilson. And I'm looking forward to reading it. It says here, the survivors of what has come to be known as the Catskill Cataclysm are not out of the woods yet. As the last known members of The Hidden, they're marked for extermination. Their allies Chan and Danny and the Troika are hunting them as well, but the Hidden do what they do best, and that is to what? The Hidden do what? What does the Hidden do? The Hidden hide. Looking forward to that duology. All right, so Juan, I think it's called Juan Chuleros, helped work with a person named Mitch Hull from Rapture Brewing, Rapture Publishing, to help Fracassi freaks get signed versions of the Spanish edition of Gothic. And when I saw pictures of the front artwork, I really, really dug this. Having read the book, it helps give a little insight to the story. I just loved the artwork. And it's a trade softcover. It was coming from overseas to the United States. And what Juan did was he figured out who wanted books. They paid him. They sent them over here to Tulsa, Oklahoma, to Mitch Hall. Mitch Hall hosted Fracassi Fest 2024 at his place. And he had Philip Fracassi sign the books. And then he sent them out to the people that ordered them. So it really took care of a lot of fans, a lot of Philip Fracassi fans, and helped to get some of us signed versions of a Spanish edition of the book that we may not be able to read, but it sure looks cool. And I'm trying to find the signature page that was just here. And here it is. So there's a bookmark from Rapture Publishing, Fracassi Fest, stuck in there, as well as a signature from Philip Fracassi. It's signed and lined, and signed is always better. Philip Fracassi, another one of those guys that I have to say, one of my absolute favorite authors, walking God's green earth. So a few more. Ever hear of a guy named Nick Roberts? There is an author named Nick Roberts that on Books of Horror Facebook group got a lot of traction on one of his books. Well, I was on the internet and I saw that Nick Roberts had some books for sale on his website. And one of them was a signed limited edition version of Mean Spirited. Well, by the time I pulled it up, it was sold out. So while I was there, I ordered this trade hardcover version of his book, Mean Spirited. And it is autographed. It is signed, because signed is better. Signed, Stay Spooky, Nick Roberts. So this is a book I've got to read, and it is a hardcover, and it's like a library bound, where you have the picture directly on the boards. I kind of like that. I like it, and here's the back of it, if you will. But an alcoholic teacher and father's world spirals out of control when a former student is killed, and he's left with her dog and the dark presence that follows it. And there's a little more to it here, but it sounds really good. I've listened to some interviews, some Nick Roberts interviews, and he sounds like an interesting writer. And Mike Hughes, another friend of the channel, vouches. He vouches for Nick Roberts. So I bought a book, and coincidentally, a week or two later, the limited edition version was available again on his website. I matched them buttons, got a copy coming. Should be here any day now, maybe tomorrow. Maybe today. I don't know. It's the post office running the day after the hurricane goes by. I don't know. Just don't have all the answers. Next, I'm afraid I'm going to miss something. Next is eBay. Ever hear of it? All right, let me make some moves here. Make some furniture moves. But on eBay, I picked up some really cool stuff in no particular order, but I did save one for last. Movie novelizations for movies that I dig. Dark City, and this one is a novel by Frank Loria based on the story by Alex Proyas. Now, when this movie came out, me and a buddy went to the theater, very excited to see the latest Kiefer Sutherland film. So we went in there expecting to see Kiefer Sutherland be a cool dude, bad dude, something like that. And it turns out he was a weasel. A very disappointing character for me and my buddy. But the movie was far better than I expected it to be. Strange movie. Years later, watch it again. Strange movie. But I dig Kiefer's character a little bit more now. Not expecting him to be some tough guy or some big bad villain or big bad good guy or whatever. I like the movie a whole lot more, and I was able to pick up the novelization on eBay at a price I could tolerate. And let's see, first edition, first print once again. You can see here the number line there goes all the way down to 1 for those of you who are interested in such things. Something else, I'm a fan of a guy named Robert B. Parker. He writes a couple of series that I like, the Jesse Stone series, but before that, and probably better than that, is the Spencer series. So I picked up a couple of first edition, first print trade hardcovers from some of the earlier novels in the Spencer series, not the earliest. The God Wolf manuscript. I'd love to have a signed first edition, first print copy of the God Wolf manuscript, but these are signed, and I love the Spencer character. He's that 70s type of detective. Private eye. He used to be a cop, a grizzled vet, all the skills, but he didn't do well with authority. So he washed out from banging heads with people like politicians and stuff like that, and now he struck out on his own. Very good stuff. And then I also got Ceremony. And I'm a big fan of these detective type novels anyway. And Spencer is one of my favorites. For those of you who are interested in the Harry Dresden series by Jim Butcher, he has said that he's influenced heavily by Robert B. Parker's Spencer series. This one also is signed, not in the typical page place, but it seemed like Robert B. Parker didn't mind signing the end papers. He signed them a lot in books. So both of these are first edition, first print books, and glad to add them to the shelf. One of these days I'd like to get all of the early books in that series signed first hardcover editions. Now, movie novelizations. Picked up another one on the eBay. And this one is End of Days, and it was quite a change for Arnold Schwarzenegger to play this film. I was excited to hear it. He had open heart surgery and kind of wondered, was Arnold done? Well, he came back with something completely different, and a movie, quite honestly, could have been better. But still to this day I watch it and I enjoy it. And that's The End of Days, a novel by Frank Lauria. Based on the screenplay written by Andrew W. Marlowe. And anyway, I dig the movie. It's not one of his finest, and it's definitely not one of his most popular, but I liked it. I liked it in the theater, and I still like it today when I watch it. It's one where I could go back, and if I could fix things, I could make a great movie, I think. Another movie novelization. Go figure. One of my earliest memories of a guy by the name of Chuck Norris, ever hear of it, is a scene where Chuck Norris jumps up and does a side kick through the windshield of a car, kicking a guy square in the chest. Iconic scene. And they made a movie novelization of Good Guys Wear Black, and I cannot figure out how they could make a book worth reading based on that movie, which was hardly worth watching, honestly. Looking back now, it's one of my lesser favorite Chuck Norris films, but that iconic scene is still an iconic scene. And I think I like the movie more than I used to, but still, I couldn't pass up an opportunity when I found out there was a movie novelization of another Chuck Norris film, which I'm a big fan of Chuck Norris. I grew up that way. My mom was a Chuck Norris fan, so as a little bitty boy, we were watching the Chuck Norris movies when they came on TV. Before we had cable or VCRs or anything like that, we'd watch Chuck Norris on TV. And Good Guys Wear Black holds a lot of memories for me. Now we're down to the last one, I think. This is a book that Levidian Publications published, and I felt like I had to have it, but I passed still. This is a book that my favorite book of all time is The Last Babylon, written by Pat Frank, which I'm excited to find out the Centipede Press is doing a limited edition version in the next couple of months. I'm so stoked for that. Can't wait to get my hands on that book. But it was often compared to another book called The Dog Stars by a guy by the name of Peter Heller. And Levidian Publications, one of my favorite publishers that ever existed, published this book, and I passed. I thought, I haven't read it. I'm not sure if I'm really going to like it. I was in a point there where I was being really careful about the books I was buying. And I passed. And then later on, I started thinking, I probably ought to get that book. I ought to read that book. I ought to get that book. I love the publisher. It sounds like a really good book, and it's often compared to my favorite book, maybe one that I ought to get. So I found a deal, sale of the century on the eBay, and I got it, and it's here. And when I put the Brodart on the cover, this material that they use on this dust jar or the slipcase is it's not sticky. It's almost a rubbery feel. And the Bro Dart just kind of makes it hard to get in and out. But anyway, it's fine. The slipcase, the material is kind of sticky. It looks fabulous and it feels even better. But you can see the foil stamping on the front there, and on the, it's hard to see in the light, or the lack thereof, you can see on the back of the slipcase that for those of you who like to put your books on the shelf the wrong way, you can still say, this is the Dog Stars by Peter Heller. And it has the LP logo. So very nice. When I got this thing in person, much better than I expected. And then the book itself, see the dust jacket artwork? Another reason I felt like I just had to have it. There's a guy by the name of Francois Vaillancourt. Ever hear of him? He did the artwork for this book. So how did I pass it up in the beginning? It's madness and mania. We've talked about this, people. I do stupid stuff all the time. But anyway, the Francois Vaillancourt illustrated dust jacket. Let me take that off and show you this book itself. Now, I said that the slipcase was kind of a rubbery coating. Well, the book's the same thing. It feels like rubbery texture. It is really cool. And the same type of foil stamping on the spine and the front. And our end papers, thick and black. And mine is copy number 678 of 750 numbered copies, signed by Peter Heller and my favorite artist, walking God's green earth, Francois Vaillancourt. Now I'll show you a little bit of the interior. This one has quite a bit of illustrations within, so I'll just show you some of them here. I'll show you some of the pictures inside, and then we'll move on about our day. See if Withlacoochee River Electric Company gets the power turned on back here so I can kill that generator and quit making so much noise. Go on about the stuff I got to go on about. But I will show you some of the interior illustrations in this book. Post-apocalyptic. And I like post-apocalyptic in some cases. I'm not everything post-apoc. But I've always liked stories that involve people having to put the pieces together, or people having to adjust to surviving in a world that doesn't have all the stuff that we have right now. It's always been just an interesting story type for me. So that doesn't mean I love to watch zombies walking around or vampires or any of that kind of stuff. Well, although some of that stuff is cool. Or mutants or aliens. But I've always kind of been fascinated with, all of a sudden, if you turned out the lights and turned them back on, and now a group of people is having to live in a world where the normal conveniences and all that are gone, especially in areas where situations where you might have towns that are empty, or towns that are having to pull together and figure out how to survive, like in Alas Babylon. They're having to pull together to survive, to secure each other, to secure the neighborhood, to find food, all these kinds of things. They interest me. I don't want to have to live through it, but it interests me as far as a story sense. And anyway, Francois' artwork just looks great here. So Levidian Publications, what they have done historically is they would have in the numbered edition books, the illustrations would be in black and white. And then in the lettered edition books, the illustrations would be in color. And at some point, I think Brian James Freeman asked people on the internet, would you rather have books with fewer illustrations but have them in color, or would you continue to like to have more illustrations like we have now, lots and lots? And I didn't show you them all just now. I just showed you some. Lots and lots of illustrations, but have them in black and white. It's cheaper to print the books. Black and white illustrations. And I can't remember how it turned out. I can't remember. We'll see. Anyway, that's my book haul for September. I'm really glad to be able to add the Dog Stars to the collection and lots of other books to the collection. Very exciting month for me. Good stuff, in my opinion, for my shelves. I can think of no more lies to tell, so thank you for your time. I do truly appreciate it, and say la vie. baby. Doo-doo.